Imagine you are playing a video game. In the early levels, the enemies are very easy to recognize. They are ugly monsters bearing fangs and claws rushing at you with weapons. You know whom to fight. That is the image of the ego in its primitive stage. Greed for money, thirst for power, naked lust, explosive anger. But when you level up, that is when you start stepping onto the path of practice, meditation, and self-development. That monster disappears. Instead, a new character appears. This character wears white robes, radiates an aura, speaks beautiful words, and claims to be your guide. He talks to you about love, about enlightenment, about saving the world. And you believe him. You hand him the key to the house of your soul. But strangely, since he entered your house, is not peaceful at all. It becomes colder, more judgmental, and more separated. You start looking at people around you, those still struggling with food and money, with eyes of pity mixed with contempt. You see yourself as superior to them. You see yourself as purer than them. Welcome to the final level of the game where you face the most dangerous villain, the spiritual ego. This is a master con artist. Why is it the most dangerous? Because it hides right in the place you think is safest, your spiritual practice. It uses the very tools designed to destroy the self. Meditation, yoga scriptures, vegetarianism, to feed the self to become fatter, stronger, and more sophisticated. It is like a drug-resistant bacterium. The doses of antibiotic spiritual methods that you take do not kill it, but make it mutate into a superior strain. Today, we will not speak soothing words. We will perform a surgery without anesthesia on our own mind. We will strip off this mask of holiness to see the true face of the one controlling the game. Because, as Alan Watts often said, you cannot be cured if you do not know you are sick, and worse if you think the sickness is the cure. First, we need to understand the basic operating mechanism of the ego. The ego at its core is a machine seeking safety and affirmation of existence, self-preservation, and self-aggrandizement. It always feels lacking, and it always wants more. At the level of an ordinary person, let's call it the secular level. The ego wants more money, more nice cars, more lovers, more fame. This is materialism. It is very crude, easy to see, and also easy to get bored with. At some point, you realize that money does not bring eternal happiness. You are sick of the rat races at the workplace. You see the meaninglessness of parties, and you decide, I will leave it all behind. I will go find the truth. I will go find enlightenment. You think that you have changed. You think that you have thrown away greed. But look closely again. Have you really thrown away greed? Or have you simply shifted the object of greed from a trivial thing, money, to a higher thing? Peace, enlightenment, holiness. Alan Watts calls this spiritual materialism. The psychological structure remains exactly the same. I, a lacking subject, am wanting to possess something, an object, to make me more perfect. Before you wanted to own a Ferrari to feel cooler than your neighbor. Now you want to own a state of awakening, to feel deeper than the sleepwalkers. Before you collected stamps, collected branded shoes. Now you collect meditation courses, collect gurus, collect spiritual experiences, times seeing light, times crying in bliss. The greedy eye still sits comfortably there. It just changed the business suit for the monk's robes. It is smarter. It knows that money is easily lost, but merit and wisdom cannot be stolen by anyone. So it invests in spirituality like a super profitable investment. It tells you, meditate so you become peaceful. Do charity so you accumulate merit. Let go so you achieve nirvana. Always that you at the center. Every spiritual act, no matter how noble it seems, ultimately returns to serve the purpose of beautifying, reinforcing, and eternalizing the ego. This is the first trick. You think you are walking out of the cage, but actually, you are just redecorating the cage with pictures of Buddha, Jesus, and the scent of incense. Now let's go deeper into the most subtle trap that the spiritual ego sets. Self-improvement. When you step onto the spiritual path, You usually start with the notion, I am a person full of sin, full of greed, anger, and ignorance. I need to fix myself. So you divide your being into two parts: the bad self, dark desires, thoughts, laziness, jealousy; the good self, the observing part, the rational part, the part wanting to practice the sheriff. And you start a civil war. The sheriff part holds a baton stalking the bad part. Every time a dark thought, for example, jealousy of a friend's success, arises, the sheriff part immediately rushes out. Ah, caught you. You must not be jealous. Jealousy is low frequency. Must love, must rejoice. Repent immediately. You feel very satisfied with this process. You think, wow, I am practicing very well. I am controlling my mind. But Alan Watts poses a question that collapses this entire illusion. Who is the one catching the criminal? If you look closely, the one playing sheriff, the one judging, wanting to fix, wanting to become better, is the ego itself. That is a sophisticated ego disguised as conscience. Why does it do that? Because it wants to control. It wants to master. It wants to demonstrate power. The act of the good eye suppressing the bad eye is essentially just a thief catching a thief. Imagine a thief breaking into a house. He hears police sirens. He cleverly runs upstairs, puts on a police uniform, then runs downstairs and shouts, "Where is the thief? I will catch him." He creates a chaotic scene, running back and forth, searching the whole house. He pretends to be very busy and righteous. But of course, he will never catch the thief because he is the thief. Likewise, you will never be able to destroy the ego with the effort of the ego. You cannot use the self to throw away the self. You cannot use thinking to silence thinking. You cannot use the desire for enlightenment, to extinguish desire. That is the act of biting your own teeth, or lifting yourself up by your shoelaces. It is an endless, vicious cycle. And the spiritual ego absolutely loves this vicious cycle, because as long as the war between good and evil inside you continues, the ego has work to do, has a role to play, and still exists. True enlightenment is not the victory of the good eye over the bad eye. Enlightenment is realizing that both are fictional roles and stepping off the stage. But the spiritual ego will never allow you to do that. It will keep you on stage by saying, "Come on, just practice for 10 more years. Eliminate a few more bad habits, and you will become a Buddha." When the spiritual ego is firmly established in the role of the practitioner, it begins to compare. The essence of the ego is comparison and separation. It only feels safe when it knows where it stands in the social hierarchy. In real life, people compare, "My house is bigger than yours. My rank is higher than yours." In spirituality, the spiritual ego compares, "I have practiced longer than you. I am strictly vegetarian while you still eat meat. I understand scriptures deeper than you." But this comparison is usually not blatant. It is sugar-coated very carefully under the shell of false humility. Alan Watts calls this the game of one-upmanship. For example, you meet a person bragging about wealth. Your spiritual ego will not be jealous of his money. It will be contemptuous. It will think, "This guy is so pitiful. He is drowning in materialism. He knows nothing about the nobility of the soul like me." In that moment, you feel one level higher than him. You are not as rich as him, but you are holier than him. And that makes your ego thrilled. Or even more subtle. You meet another practitioner. That person boasts, "I meditated for 4 hours." Your ego will say, maybe just in the head or politely, "That's great. But my teacher taught that quality is more important than quantity. I only meditated for 30 minutes, but I achieved deep concentration." Translation: I am better than you. Even the ego can play the game. I am the most humble person here. It is like a contest to see who bows lower. But deep down, the one bowing lowest is telling himself, "Ha! Look how low I bowed. No one lets go of the ego as well as I do." And right then, his ego is inflating like a balloon. The danger of this game is that it creates terrible division. Instead of seeing unity, that I and you are one, that Buddha nature is in a dog as well as in a human. The spiritual ego builds fortress walls. It divides the world into awakened ones, us, and sheep sleepwalkers, them. It creates a spiritual aristocracy, and when you believe you belong to this elite class, you lose the ability to connect sincerely with humans. You become cold, judgmental, and lonely on your throne of papier-mâché. This is the most heartbreaking part, and also the part most damaging to the real world. When the spiritual ego starts helping others. There is a saying, no one is as cruel as a fake saint. When the spiritual ego sees the pain of others, its first reaction is not empathy, but fixing. It does not sit down to cry with the suffering person. It stands from above and throws down empty moral advice. Spiritual bypassing. Your friend just lost a loved one. You say, don't be sad, that is the law of impermanence. Their soul is liberated. Be joyful. Someone is angry because of being treated unfairly. You say, don't be angry. Anger is drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Forgive and send love to the enemy. Someone is depressed. You say, that is due to your karma. Meditate to increase vibration frequency. It sounds very correct, very dharma. But essentially, it is spiritual violence. Why? Because you are denying their true human emotions. You are forcing them to suppress pain, the bad I, to put on the peaceful mask just like you. You do not accept them as they are. You only accept them if they become the enlightened version you desire. Deeper still, your rushing to give advice or trying to heal them is usually not because you love them, but because their suffering shakes your fake peace. You cannot stand negative energy. You are afraid it will pollute your aura. So you want to extinguish it as fast as possible with spiritual painkillers. That act of helping is essentially an act of self-protection of the ego. And more dangerous is the Messiah complex. The spiritual ego loves to believe that it has a mission to save the world. It rushes to do charity, preach, change society. But because the inner motivation is the affirmation of the self, these actions often leave terrible consequences. History has proven the bloodiest crusades, the most brutal persecutions are often carried out in the name of God, in the name of truth. When you believe you are the absolute representative of good, you allow yourself to do cruel things to what you label as evil. As Alan Watts says, please do not help me, because you might ruin everything. A person who cannot swim, jumping down to save a drowning person, only doubles the number of victims. So where is the exit? How to escape this inescapable maze, when even the effort to escape is a trap of the ego? Alan Watts's answer might shock you or make you laugh. Stop trying to become a saint. Accept the rascal inside you. He says that this universe does not operate in absolute black and white. God is not a stern, boring, and solemn old man. God has a sense of humor. The universe has sharp thorns, has mosquitoes, has storms, and has mischief. In every human, even the most enlightened ones, there always exists a rascal element that cannot be eliminated. That is the human part, the instinct part, the imperfect part, the naughty part. The spiritual ego tries to kill this rascal. It wants you to become a perfect plastic statue, never angry, never greedy, never lustful. But that is death, not life. True liberation comes when you dare to look straight at that rascal, wink at him, and say, "Hello there, I know you are there. I know I also have times of greed, times of jealousy, times of wanting to kick someone's ass. And that is okay." When you acknowledge your shadow, you strip away its power. A demon is only scary when it hides in the dark. When you drag it into the light and say, "This is my demon," it turns into a small dog. It is still there, but it no longer controls you. You no longer have to waste energy acting the role of a saint. You become authentic. And paradoxically, only when you accept you are a rascal can you become a truly good person. Why? Because you will have compassion. When you know you are also full of flaws, you will no longer stand on a high podium to judge others. You will see a drunkard, a thief, or an angry person, and you will not say, "How sinful." You will say, "I understand. I also have that seed in me. If I were in his situation, I might also do the same. True compassion does not come from trying to become nice. It comes from a deep understanding of the common imperfection of human life. It is pure empathy, not a top-down favor. Finally, the destination of the spiritual journey is not to become a Superman flying on clouds, radiating blinding aura. The destination is to return to being an ordinary human. In Zen, there is a famous set of paintings called the 10 Bulls, 10 ox-herding pictures. The first picture is searching for the bull, searching for truth. The 8th picture is both person and bull disappearing, reaching emptiness, absolute enlightenment. But that is not the end yet. There remains the 10th picture, entering the marketplace with bliss-bestowing hands. In this picture, the practitioner returns to the noisy, dusty market. He looks like a fat guy, big belly, laughing loudly, drinking wine with drunks, playing with children. No one knows he is a Buddha. He wears no prayer beads, sits on no lotus throne. He merges into the flow of life. But where he passes, dead trees bloom. That is the image of liberation from the spiritual ego. You no longer need to prove you are a practitioner. You no longer need to use big, heavy words. You no longer distinguish between life and dharma, mundane and holy. You eat when hungry, sleep when tired. You work, you love, you get angry, and then you forget. You become an empty boat. You are no longer a good person trying to save the world. You are just a clear presence. And precisely that effortless presence is what truly heals the world. Take off the heavy robe of arrogance. Burn the enlightened person certificate in your mind. Step down from the altar you built yourself. Touch your feet to the mud. Feel the cold, the roughness, the dirt of the mud. And realize that the lotus can only bloom from mud, not on marble. The spiritual ego is a brilliant con artist, but it has a fatal weakness. It does not know how to laugh. It always takes everything seriously. Therefore, the strongest weapon to destroy it is laughter. Laugh at your own foolishness. Laugh at the self trying to be Buddha. In that crisp laughter, the con artist will dissolve like mist, and you will find yourself standing there, naked, imperfect, but radiant and freer than ever.